Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
An Australian points-based system would allow the UK to take back control of immigration. That's what Boris Johnson claimed today. Under the plans, anyone wanting to live here would have to be able to speak English and have the right qualifications to get a job.
But that could only happen if Britain votes to leave the EU. The Remain side said it wouldn't work and it would damage the economy. Here's our political correspondent, Carl Dinnan.
Boris Johnson and Employment Minister Priti Patel took their message to Preston in Lancashire today, and what they unveiled, along with Michael Gove, was a new set of proposals on immigration.
Is it not time? Is it not time we took back control of our immigration policy, gave the people of this country the pay rise that they deserve?
Although not running for government, Vote Leave have still come up with what sounds like a manifesto policy. They want an Australian-style points-based immigration system where admission would follow a skills assessment. Although EU citizens already in the UK would see no change and Irish citizens would continue to have free movement. The government says that would break the rules of the single market and cut off our access. And yet more international economists agree it would harm the economy.
Today you have the fantasy politics of the Leave campaign with damaging and unworkable policies that would cost jobs, and you have the wake-up call from the highly respected OECD talking about the grim economic future for Britain if we leave the EU.
Earlier, Boris Johnson had visited the company making Olympic uniforms for Team GB.
Yeah, well, we come talk about another big stitch up.
Yet even here, the boss told me there were the kind of EU workers Vote Leave seemed to want to keep out.
Are many of those workers from the EU what you might call unskilled?
They are. I mean, yeah, it's not a term I particularly like because their commitment and work ethic is in fact a skill. But yes, it is a manual labour environment in the warehouse.
And even if Britain does vote out, how does Boris Johnson think his proposal will become government policy?
We think it's very sensible. You have an Australian-style points-based system.
David Cameron has shown no appetite for this at all.
Of course not, because at the moment...
So you're going to have to either persuade him or depose him?
At the moment, but of course not, because at the moment we're stuck in the European Union. It's not possible to do this at the moment. But post-Brexit, post-June the 23rd, that option will be on the table.
But that may be as far as it goes, unless Britain leaves not only the European Union, but also the single market.
It may seem odd for Vote Leave to be pitching policies like some kind of opposition, but this one today has got everyone talking about immigration, and in this debate, that is their strongest card.
Carl Dinnan, ITV News, Preston.
So how would and could Vote Leave's plan work in practice? Well, our national editor Allegra Stratton looks at what effect it might have on the UK's borders, on our workforce and on Britain's working abroad.
Right now, people across the EU have the automatic right to travel to the UK. Today, Vote Leave told us how they'd change all that. So how would it change our workforce? Only skilled migrants suitable for job vacancies who speak English would be admitted. But this would still see migration from inside and outside the EU, just of migrants fitting the new criteria. Because Australia's system was intended to boost its population, many think it's the wrong model.
The problem with the points-based system in Australia is just that it's too complex. It doesn't cover all aspects of work migration. Now, it's far easier to actually just have one system of work permits that covers all people that want to come to the UK to work, if the UK votes to leave the European Union. And if you've got the skills that the economy needs, or you're a highly skilled worker, then you can get your visa. If you don't meet the threshold, then the visa wouldn't be available for you.
Part of the UK is directly connected to the EU, the border between Northern and Southern Ireland. Vote Leave say they wouldn't introduce any border controls, but how exposed is the UK-Irish border? Today, the MEP for Dublin told us he doesn't see how it would work.
If the UK is not in the European Union and it has its own rules when it comes to those who can come and go from the United Kingdom, The reality is that has some impact on us where we're in the European Union because of the border. It's an invisible border. You know, what restrictions would be put on people who arrive in Dublin or arrive in parts of the Republic of Ireland, travel into Northern Ireland and into other parts of Britain then? How would that work in effect?
Vote Leave has also said EU workers already in the UK could stay here. It's just future migrants that would be affected. But what about Brits abroad? Some 1.2 million Britons currently live elsewhere in the EU, most of them in Spain, Ireland and France. With a tougher UK system, a future United Kingdom government would have to strike bilateral agreements to ensure other EU nations don't retaliate. A new immigration system if the UK votes to leave Europe. Not necessarily a big cut, but a bid for more control over immigration. Allegra Stratton, ITV News.
And our political editor, Robert Peston, is live now in Westminster. Robert, both Boris Johnson and Michael Gove deny that this is an alternative vision of government. Do you believe them?
Well, yes and no. They were widely seen to be losing the economic argument, and so they had to get on to precise policies to shore up support. They've announced two eye-catching ones, eliminating VAT on energy and introducing these new restrictions on immigration. Now, the problem is that does sound, as Carl said, like the manifesto promises of an opposition party. And of course, they can only get them implemented, not only if they win the Brexit vote, but if the rest of the cabinet and the Prime Minister agree. Now, the Prime Minister and the Remain side said they disagree. He said they disagree with the immigration policy. So Boris Johnson and Michael Gove's promises are only credible if they're prepared to unseat the Prime Minister. Now, they both say they want the Prime Minister to remain in his job. But let's be clear, there are many of their supporters who are unhappy with the Prime Minister. One of them said to me today, look, the Prime Minister is on warning. He keeps making these apocalyptic claims about what would happen to us if we leave. We think that's outrageous, given that before he announced the referendum, he said we could do perfectly well outside. So if he doesn't behave, well, then in those circumstances, we might have to try and get rid of him.
Robert, thank you.